our speakers from an important movement, our labor movement, the people's movement. We're going to be joined by Chris Buckley, the president of the Ontario Federation of Labour, Canada's largest provincial labour federation. Chris is a lifelong trade unionist and social justice advocate. Chris has dedicated himself to improving the lives of every worker in Ontario. So let's all welcome Mr. Chris Buckley.
Thank you, brother. Good afternoon, sisters and brothers. Before I get into my comments, I want you to do something. I want you to shake the hand of the person closest to you and spread some love. Okay, now that's the Ontario we want, everybody, isn't it? I want to thank you for inviting me here today. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you. Sisters and brothers, in the past 8 to 10 months, it has become increasingly apparent that Canada isn't immune to the violence of hatred and bigotry. But with numerous incidents of right-wing violence across our country, I can tell you that this hatred, which has only received more attention in the recent months, has not happened overnight. Friends, racism, bigotry, and hate, white supremacy, and neo-Nazis are entrenched in our communities, on our streets, and even in our workplaces. They've been there for many years. Sisters and brothers, if that wasn't true, we would all know that Amina Diab, a hijab-wearing woman of color and temp worker assigned to Fiera Foods, lost her life on a conveyor belt that did not have proper safety measures to prevent her death. What troubled me even more is that when Amina's family arrived at the industrial bakery on that day of her death, the factory was still buzzing and producing, and nothing had stopped. Nothing had stopped. It did happen, and it shouldn't happen anymore. Workers need laws that will protect them from exploitation in the workplace. Workers in Ontario, regardless of race, regardless of religion, deserve decent work. For 60 years now, the OFL has been a central voice of the labor movement, and we remain committed to fighting for equity in the workplaces and beyond, together with our partners. The fight for 15 and fairness. We've advocated and have made some significant gains in Ontario in Bill 148. But Bill 148 isn't done yet, sisters and brothers. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and I encourage you to take it and help build fair and just work across Ontario for every worker in the province. I also urge you to stand up against inequality, bigotry, and racism wherever you see it. We cannot let this violence grow across our province or across our great country of Canada. That's why the Ontario Federation of Labour pushed hard for our government to form an anti-racism directorate, and we will continue to advocate that this directorate is funded appropriately. Finally, sisters and brothers, our anti-hate actions, shared commitment to erase discrimination of all forms, can only be accomplished with grassroots efforts like we have here today, including rallies right across this province and right across this country. We have to send a message that this is not the Ontario we want, and we are not going to settle for hatred any longer. As we continue to mobilize, I call on our law enforcement, intelligent communities, and our local, provincial, and federal leaders to step up and add their voice to anti-hate narrative. On behalf of Amina and every worker in Ontario, let's unify and show that racists, extremists, and other hate groups that there are more of us than there are of them. And we will rise up against hate. We will show those who hate that love will prevail, not hate. We will show workers across this province how strong we can be when we're united. Because when I look around here today, this is what unity looks like, sisters and brothers. So in closing, we are not going to give up. You have the full support of the Ontario Federation of Labour, 54 unions and 1 million members across the province of Ontario. And we know, sisters and brothers, we are only stronger when we're together. And we are going to make this the Ontario we want. We are going to build the Canada that everybody wants and everyone deserves. Thank you very much. At this point, I want you to hear from my good friend and my brother, Ahmed Gaied.
I'm Ahmed Gaied, and I am the Executive Vice President of the Ontario Federation of Labour. And I'm here on behalf of Labour and the 1 million workers that we represent here in the province. And as a Muslim man, and as a person of color, I'm here to say that I stand with you against hate and bigotry and racism, and so do the workers of this province. Islamophobia, homophobia, transphobia, anti-black racism, anti-indigenous racism, it's real and it exists. We acknowledge that, we know that, we see it. Many of our provincial and national leaders have been silent, unfortunately, on the matter. And as a matter of shameful fact, many of them have even added to the hate. They've added to the hate as our hijab-wearing sisters continue to be assaulted in the streets and public spaces. They've added to the hate when places of worship like synagogues, temples, mosques continue to be graffitied and vandalized. And as the U.S. President, number 45 as we'll call him, builds on the backs of slaves by normalizing hate, attempts to implement a Muslim ban, and implements an environment of xenophobia and wall-building rhetoric. Sisters and brothers, communities cannot stay silent anymore. We need to speak up, we need to rise against hate. It's time we stand up together in a very courageous way. Some may say that our borders are immune and protected from such transgressions. Well, I can tell you with certainty that Canada is not immune to the racist, white supremacist violence. It exists in this country, and we only need to think back to this past January, when we all witnessed a horrifying display of terrorism and white supremacy, when 6 Muslim brothers were gunned down in a place of worship in a Quebec City mosque. Our community was still grieving. They were still grieving while white supremacists rallied and came out and vandalized other local mosques in the area. But I gotta tell you, their hate rallies were not as successful as they intended, because we rose up, we mobilized, and we organized together. And we stood in solidarity to speak up against hate. And we are going to continue to rise up and speak up against hate without fear. And we got to continue to do this in a very courageous way. Friends, allies, as we peacefully claim this space here today, let's send a clear message to white supremacists everywhere. We will not allow these horrible transgressions against anybody in our community to occur. We will rise up. These are our streets and this is our space. White supremacists and racists are not welcome here. They're not welcomed in our workplaces, they're not welcomed in our communities, and dare I say it, they're not welcomed in our country. We know who these streets belong to. Whose streets are these? Whose streets? Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets? Our streets! The labor movement's with you in solidarity. Thank you.